Hi, my name is Stephen Turner, and I am the president of Gesher Galicia. We are excited to present to you today a conversation with a noted author, educator, editor, publisher, and award-winning genealogist, Arthur Kurzweil. It is my sincere pleasure and honor that Arthur has accepted our invitation to do this podcast. Those of you who were able to attend the gala at the IAJGS in Philadelphia know what a privilege it is to listen to Arthur. We are here to discuss his new book, The Persistence of Memory, which can be purchased at the link on the podcast hangout. Arthur Kurzweil grew up hearing his father's tales of Dobromyl, the shtetl in what is now Ukraine, which his father had left behind as a child when his family emigrated to New York in the 1920s. As a young man in the 1970s, Arthur obsessively sought to rediscover his lost world, researching in the New York Public Library and tracking down the shtetl's surviving immigrants. This research led him to write his best-selling book, From Generation to Generation, How to Trace Your Genealogy and Family History, but his obsession with Dobromyl didn't abate. In The Persistence of Memory, Arthur brings us along on his quest to find his father's ancestral home in Dobromyl, a quest that covers physical and spiritual ground. The book joins him on a frustrating trip to Soviet-held Ukraine in the 1970s, to multiple return trips to a free Ukraine in the 21st century, in a quest that brings him to the height of elation and to the depths of despair. Welcome, Arthur, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Okay, I want to start by talking about what you said is two of the greatest lessons we learn from the Torah, from Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi and Hillel, to love thy neighbor. And that influenced much of your work that you talk about in this book. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, my attitude was that when I would get to Dobromyl, that the people who were there were undoubtedly the children and grandchildren of people who were neighbors of my family when my father lived there in his youth. And when I read this notion of honor of loving your neighbor, these were my neighbors, and I wanted to meet them. I did not have a chip on my shoulder. I did not want to be heavy and tell them that their families killed my family and so forth and so on. I wanted to start fresh. I wanted the new generation to meet each other on a different ground. So it ended up that I fell in love with these people.
That's great. Now, you had an obsession with your great-grandfather, Avraham Abush Kurzweil,
That's right.
who you were named after.
That's right.
And you tell the story of finding his picture in the Yisker book in the public library.
Yes.
Why don't you share that story with us?
Well, I looked in atlases and encyclopedias in my local public library for information about my father's town, and I could find nothing, not even a dot on the map. But one day I went into the New York Public Library on 42nd Street and Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, and I went to a room called the Jewish Division. And in that, this is supposed to be one of the greatest collections of Jewish books in the world. I went to the card catalog and I looked up the name Dobromyl. And to my great surprise, I found a card in the catalog which said that the library had a book about this town. To me, it was impossible. How could there be a book about a town that I could not even find as a dot on a map? But I filled out this little card that you have to fill out to get a book, and I brought it up to the librarian, and she went to the back room, and 5 minutes later, she comes back from the back room, and she hands me a copy of a book that is called Memorial Book Dobromyl. It's a 500-page book about the town in Poland. It was Poland at the time when my father was born. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe that I was holding a book that I could find no evidence of anywhere about this town. I sat down on a table and chair in the library, and I started flipping through the book. And in a couple of minutes' time, I discovered that there's a picture in the book of my great-grandfather. I was very excited to find this picture. By the way, he was not a famous person in the town. He was a tinsmith. He made pots and pans and other things made out of metal. But there was a picture of him in the book. I recognized his picture because I had seen photographs of him from my family, and I was very excited. I was so excited that I ran over to the librarian to tell her what I had found, and she couldn't care less. She didn't share my excitement, but that was a great discovery for me. And I decided right then and there that I'm going to trace my family tree. I'm going to see how far back I can go. I'm going to see how much information I can gather. I figured if I could find a picture of my great-grandfather, Avraham Abish, the tinsmith, in a book in the 42nd Street Library, there must be more information. So I started pursuing it, and was quite successful in my genealogical research.
Right. Now, you said your first memory as a Jew was sitting on your grandfather's lap in shul on Rosh Hashanah.
That's right.
And
That's right.
crying. Now, I had a very similar memory. I wasn't sitting on my grandfather's lap, but it was in a Galiciana shul in East New York, Brooklyn. And it's amazing how like these childhood memories get embedded in us, and then we return to it later on when we think about it, and it drives a mission in what we want to do.
I can still smell the talus.
I can also. And standing under the talus on Simchas Torah when they were holding it up for the kids to come up and get an aliyah. And then we were tying the tzitzis on little poles around the bima and stuff like that. Those are great memories that I don't think our kids, well, my kid, I don't know. It's so hard, but that was the memories of our generation with refugees davening in these shuls in Brooklyn. Okay, now you had tremendous perseverance in your genealogical pursuits. You like got every phone book that you could find looking up Kurzweils. Although when you started to call people and you said Kurzweil, they didn't know who you were because you were pronouncing the name differently than they would pronounce it back in Galicia.
Yeah, that's right. I would say my name is Arthur Kurzweil, and they didn't know the name. And I insisted to some people, you have to know the name. My family lived in this town. It was not a big town. My great-grandfather was in the memorial book. I later discovered in one conversation that my last name was not Kurzweil, it was Kurzweil. Now, to my ear, Kurzweil and Kurzweil are not so different. But
Right.
but most of those people who I spoke to, Kurzweil was the name that the family had. So I then found out who I was. I was not Arthur Kurzweil. I was Arthur Kurzweil,
An Einikel of Yudel.
Einikel of Yudel, the tinsmith. That's right.
Right. Now you tell a great story of I think it's from your mother's side that you are a descendant of a great Rebbe.
That's right.
And in front of a yeshiva in Jerusalem, you met a man who was a survivor of Auschwitz, who knew your great uncle Pinchas,
That's
and he
right.
told a great story about Rabbi Akiva. Could you share that story with us?
The story about Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah,
Well, if I
that
remember,
they told in Auschwitz that they were telling each other
oh,
when they were learning in Auschwitz.
yeah. So it's a kind of a long story, but
Well, an abridged version.
an abridged version. Um, there was it was about Rabbi Eliezer and Elijah the prophet,
Oh, Elijah. Okay.
and this man who his name Akiva Gottlieb, he was in Auschwitz with my great uncle, and in fact, he told me that he studied Torah in Auschwitz with Pinchas. And then he said to me, "Can I tell you a story that your grandfather's brother told me in Auschwitz?" And this is the story. There was an incident where Elijah the prophet came to earth sent by God to do his work. And he bumped into Rabbi Eliezer. And he said, Rabbi Eliezer said to Elijah, I know that God sends you to the world to do his work, and I follow you around. And Elijah the prophet said, no, you can't follow me around because you're going to have too many questions. I don't have time for your questions. So Rabbi Eliezer pleaded with Elijah, please, I won't ask any questions, just let me follow you around. So Elijah said, okay, you can follow me, but if you ask any questions, I'm going to send you away. And off they went. And the first day in the evening, they got to this little dilapidated shack with a young couple who lived in the shack. They were impoverished people. All they owned was a cow, and the cow lived in the hut with the young couple. Well, when Rabbi Eliezer woke up the next morning, he saw that Elijah was praying to kill the cow, and the cow dropped dead. And I said to, and Rabbi Eliezer said to Elijah, what did you do that for? These were such young, sweet people. They didn't have very much, but whatever they had, they shared with us. Why did you kill the cow? Pray to God to kill the cow. And Elijah said, you're going to ask too many questions. I told you I don't have any time for questions. So Rabbi Eliezer promised, okay, please let me go with you. I'm not going to ask any more questions. Well, the next day, it was towards evening again, and they were looking for someplace to sleep. And they knocked on the door of this big mansion. And the man who was the owner of the mansion came out and in a very gruff way said, what do you want? And they said they were looking for lodging. And this man, the owner of the mansion, put them in the cellar, a cold, damp cellar. He didn't offer them anything to eat. He just put them in the cellar. During the night, there was a commotion, and Rabbi Eliezer woke up to see that Elijah the prophet was fixing up the walls, patching up the walls in the cellar. Now, he didn't deserve the mansion he lived in. Why was he fixing up the walls for him? But he knew not to say anything. Off they went the next morning to they were in a neighborhood that was very rich. The synagogue in the neighborhood was beautiful. It was made out of gold and silver. But the people were very unfriendly. And Elijah looked at them and said, I want to bless you all that you all become leaders. All become leaders. Rabbi Eliezer wondered, why would you do that? These people didn't deserve anything. Why would you bless them to become leaders? But he knew not to ask any questions. So the next day, they are in a neighborhood that's very impoverished. The people were living in squalor, but they were very nice people. And Elijah the prophet looked at these people and said, I want to bless you that one of you becomes a leader. And Rabbi Eliezer is confused. To the nasty people, he wishes they were all leaders. To the lovely people, he said you should have one leader. Rabbi Eliezer said to Elijah, I know that I'm going to have to leave, but I beg you, please, could you please explain to me what's going on? I don't understand anything you're saying, anything you're doing. And Elijah said, okay, I will tell you what I'm doing, but then you're going to have to leave. He said, remember that first night, that young couple, they were so poor, but they gave us whatever they had? My mission at that house was it was time for the wife to die. I pleaded to God, and I said, don't take the wife, take the cow. And the cow died. He said, you remember that mansion where you thought that I was patching up the walls? I wasn't patching up the walls. I knew there was a treasure buried in the wall there, and he didn't know about the treasure, so I patched it up. He'll never find that treasure. You know that rich neighborhood where the people were so nasty? What did I say to them? I said, I want to bless you that you all become leaders. Were you ever a member of an organization where everybody thought they were a leader? That wasn't a blessing, that was a curse. And in that other neighborhood where the people were living in squalor, but they were all very lovely people, I made a different blessing. I said, one of you should become a leader, because all that neighborhood really needed was one good leader to lead them out of the poverty that they were in. In each case of this story, what you thought happened was not what happened. Something else happened. We often do this. We depend on surfaces, and we don't realize that there's often other things behind the surface. And this was a profound story, particularly since my great uncle told this story in Auschwitz. It's a very bone chilling story in a way, but that's the story that I heard.
All right, I love that story. Thank you for and you tell you tell it so well. I thank you for that. Now, you had experience with Bobover Hasidim, and
Yes,
I love how you would say, "I'm going to Bobov tonight" when you were going for Kabbalah Shabbat to go to in Brooklyn for to see the Bobover Rebbe, and you ended up going for like 10 years.
that's right.
Although you were very turned off at first, the fighting, the pushing, and the shoving and the elbowing, for people to get a blessing from the Baba Hasidim. How did you overcome that, getting turned off, to be so inspired to go for 10 years?
Well, I remember that the first night that I was there, at the end of the davening, people go over to the Rebbe to get a blessing. And people were pushing and shoving and climbing over each other. And I thought to myself, this is not for me. And I went home. But something in me, I don't know what it was, said, go back and give it a second try. I went back the next Friday night, and the same thing happened. They were davening and everything was fine until after the davening, everybody goes rushing over to get a bracha, a blessing from the Rebbe. And they're pushing and shoving and they're elbowing each other and climbing over each other to get this blessing. And then I said to myself, I've had it. This place is really not for me. I gave it a second try, but I'm sorry. I said to myself, it isn't my place. But lo and behold, the next Friday came and I had this urge to go back a third time. I don't know why, but something drew me to them. I felt like I was in Eastern Europe, even though it was in Borough Park. And I wanted to touch the authenticity of these Hasidim. So we davened Friday night. At the end of the davening, the same thing happened. Everyone is rushing and pushing and shoving, but this time it was different. I said to the guy next to me, what are you guys, animals? What are you doing? You're pushing and shoving and elbowing each other to get to the Rebbe. Why are you behaving this way? And the chassid looks at me and he said to me, we have a rule around here. When it comes to your neshama, when it comes to your soul, there are no gentlemen. Everybody wanted a blessing for their soul. And it was at that moment that suddenly I realized that there was only one person in the whole room that was having a bad time, and that was me. Everybody else accepted the fact that they're pushing and shoving, and they really weren't being pushed and shoved so much. It was like salmon going upstream, and I was the odd man out. When I realized that that's what they were doing, I joined in. It didn't bother me anymore, and I ended up going there for 10 years.
So these people don't have Shabbos meals with their families Friday night? They spend the whole night late with the Rebbe?
Yeah, well, some of them go home afterwards at 1 o'clock in the morning and have something to eat. But the great experience is to go to the Rebbe and to eat with the Rebbe, to share in his meal.
You take a shtetl from that gets passed around to
That's
everybody
right.
from
That's
his
right.
plate.
From his plate. So it's a way of symbolically joining in with him in greeting Shabbos. Some of the guys that they would eat beforehand, but the great honor and the great privilege was to sit with the Rebbe. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of people there, so you're not like you're sitting at their table. You're all around up on the bleachers and so forth. But there was something very special about it. When the Rebbe sang Sholem Aleichem, there was something that came from his inner being, and it just lit up the room. It was every week. It was very special for me.
Right. Now, so you did that for 10 years. And did you stop because you moved, or was there some other reason?
Yeah, I moved. My family moved. We had 3 children, and we had a small apartment, and we decided that we wanted a little more space for the kids. So we moved to Passaic, New Jersey, which is a traditional Jewish town. A lot of synagogues and other things there. And my children basically grew up in Passaic.
Right, right. Now, in the book, you tell the story that your first attempt to visit Dobromyl was during Soviet times, and you couldn't get a permit. You got as far as Lviv, and you went to the office, and you were being followed by somebody, and you just couldn't get a permit. And later on, people told you if you would have like played a little schmearing a little bit, you would have been able to go there. But you very disappointedly left. But you met and you became a collector of the Judaica items that you would see. And at one person's house in Shemishel, you went to this house where the guy's father had a lot of Judaica, and he even had a Torah scroll. He had a portion of the Torah scroll, and he ripped the portion of the Torah scroll and he gave it to you. I could just imagine how that made you shiver.
I didn't know whether to thank him or to kill him. On the one hand, I understood he didn't know that this Torah scroll was sacred, and you don't do that to a Torah scroll. He thought he was being a gentleman and a generous person by giving me a piece of this Torah. So I didn't make a big deal out of it. He wasn't Jewish. He didn't know any better, and I forgave him.
And did you eventually bury that piece in a Jewish cemetery?
No, I actually framed it, and it's hanging on my wall.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's even better. That's even better. Okay, now the Iron Curtain fell, and you made several trips to Dobromyl, and your attitude there was that you wanted to reach out to the children.
Yes.
And your generosity was far-fetched, but you specifically did not want to tell the children about the Holocaust. And other than not to just, think that you were there on some, different kind of mission, but why do you feel that it wasn't important to tell the children
I think it's important for them to learn about it. I just did not think that I was the one to have to tell them. I was there looking for friends. I was there looking to make a good impression and to warm up to these young people. I was there. I sponsored the building of a playground in the middle of the town. I wanted to see the children. It's an impoverished town, as you mentioned before, but a playground in the middle of the town. Somebody told me recently that's become the center of the children's lives. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make friends. I didn't want to be the one to tell them the horrible story of the Holocaust. They were going to learn it sooner or later, I suppose, when they got older. But I didn't feel it was my place to be the one to come from America and go to this town and tell them what horrors happened in their town, probably from some of their relatives. It just was, I don't believe that the sins of the fathers pass on to the children. So these were innocent children. They were all innocent children. Nobody did anything terrible among these children. They just wanted to grow up in a healthy way. So I made it my business to not be the one to inform them about the horrors that took place in their town.
Now, your generosity and your tzedakah that you raised and were most of it out of your own pocket, was totally geared towards the children.
Yes.
And the school and the gymnasium, buying equipment, computer equipment, audiovisual equipment, repairing the roof in the soccer stadium, although you wouldn't pay for AstroTurf. And as I was reading, I was very glad to read that you wouldn't pay for that. And you received some criticism from your fellow Jews on why are you using all this effort and tzedakah that you have? Why aren't you using it to help Jews or to help Israel or something like that? Why to these people whose grandfathers and great-grandfathers might have been involved in murdering us? You want to deal with that?
The honest answer is that I don't know. The honest answer is that I was pulled in that direction. But when I think about it, I think about the fact that, again, I wanted to build bridges. I didn't want to build walls. We're a new generation. I was born after the Holocaust. These children were born after the Holocaust. I wanted to meet them on that level, not being burdened by the past. So that's what I did. I looked for things that I could do that would help the children on immediately. You know, to have computers, to have tablets in their school. This was unthinkable. They didn't have any money for anything. I bought tape recorders. I bought some projectors. I bought sports equipment. I even bought a lawnmower for them to mow the lawn on the football field. They had nothing, so I felt that I could do a little something in this town, that I could make a difference. Maybe it was my ego. Maybe I wanted to be a big shot. I don't know. I really don't know why I did it. I know that everybody appreciated it, and somehow I felt that rather than give money to a big organization where I'm just a drop in the bucket, in Dobromyl, I was able to really make a difference in one town. And these, all children are God's children.
Very well put. And it reminds me a lot of some criticism that we received at Gesher Galicia, that after Russia invaded Ukraine, we started an emergency appeal for the Ukrainian Jewish community, for the refugees. And we raised $65,000. And it didn't only go to the Jews, but it was distributed by Jewish organizations. That was our mission, to distribute the money to Jewish organizations to help any refugee, whoever they were. And we received a lot of criticism, like, why are you helping these people and stuff like that. But they're very, much of the same issues that you referred to. But
If it was the other way around, I would hope that they would help me.
me, okay, I totally agree with that. And you developed a great relationship with the mayor.
Yes.
Okay. And he did not hesitate to come to you and what can you do this? Can you do that? And in the book, practically every time you said yes, although you said that there were times you did say no. But then some other people, you told me to be honest with you when I read the book, to give you a candid view, that some people from a chess club came to you and said, can you, contribute some money to fix up the club? And you went to the mayor, and the mayor said, don't do it, because they're only going to sit around there and drink. The unemployed men are going to be drinking vodka and stuff like that. No, you're better off spending the money here. And you listened to the mayor. And do you think that maybe the mayor wanted to keep your generosity within his purveyance, something that he could control, and didn't want other people coming to you looking for donations also?
It's possible. I never thought of it that way. I felt he was an honest man, and he was directing me in a certain direction. And I saw that the place they wanted to make this chess club, and the kind of people who were hanging around in front of this storefront, these were not the children who I wanted to help. If it was a chess club for children, I wouldn't have asked him. But I wanted to get some guidance, and he told me what seemed to be the truth. And again, I trusted him. A lot of what I did there was based on a friendship that I had with him. And I wanted to honor that friendship. He was the mayor of the town. I wanted to give him the honor of being an honest source, and point me in good directions. And he did.
And they made you an honorary citizen
Yes.
with a big ceremony.
That's right.
Okay. Now, you joined and you talked with great excitement when you found that there was a Facebook group from Dobromyl. And you joined it, and you started to interact with people there. You got friends in the community, and you had a very positive experience with this Facebook group. Now, I did this. My father was born in the shtetl of Nadvorna, which I said when we spoke privately before this. And I also joined the Nadvorna Facebook group. I did not have such a wonderful experience there, but maybe because of what you said about the Holocaust and things like that. I didn't come there to preach about the Holocaust or anything, but the first auction that took place in Galicia took place on Erev Sukkot in Nadvorna on October 6th, 1941. And on October 6th, 1922, I went on the Nadvorna. I just joined. I joined the Nadvorna Facebook group, and I just put down that I, Stephen Turner, a descendant of the Jews of Nadvorna, and on October 6th, 1941, our Jews were massacred. 3,000 Jews were massacred, and we remember them today. That was the extent of my post. Okay, there were some very nice comments, some very nice expressions of sympathy, and there were also some very not nice comments. And talking about, well, you remember them, but what about all our OUN people and stuff like that? And there weren't 3,000; it was more like a different number. But and that part of Ukraine, Western Ukraine, is a very nationalistic part of Ukraine. It was the homeland of Stefan Bandera. And in all these towns, in Nadvorna, Dobromyl, Lviv, right, there were all statues to the hero Stefan Bandera, who's a very complicated person. And couldn't you go into in the book, you have a chapter about expressing your feelings about how they look up to this man who was involved in killing so many Jews and Poles.
Yeah, I had a lot of ambivalence about lots of things when I was there. I just made it my business not to express it all. When I went on the Dobromyl Facebook page for the first time, I said my name is Arthur Kurzweil, and my father was born in Dobromyl. My grandfather and my great-grandfather were all born in Dobromyl. We're a Jewish family. Am I welcomed here? And I was flooded with people responding, all positive, saying, "Of course you're welcome here. We don't." One person said, "We don't know our own history. We need you to tell us about our own history." I didn't come down heavy at first. I simply said, "We lived in the town. Am I welcomed here?" And I think that approach might have softened things a little.
Well, I want to say that was not my first post on the October 6th massacre, but I introduced myself like that, and that we love Nadvorna, and we had a great visit in 2018. I said, but then it was the post on that day that got those responses.
Yeah. Well, I'm aware of the fact that it wasn't only Jews who were murdered brutally in that town in Poland. We don't have a monopoly on that. I want to make sure that again that we build bridges, that we're all human beings. It says in the Talmud, why did God create Adam and Eve first? Why didn't he create people all over the place? And the answer the rabbis give is so that nobody could say that my ancestor is better than yours. We all have this, we're all one human family. And I wanted to try, if I could, to live up to that ideal.
Very true, very true. Okay, now you talk about how, like you just said, that it wasn't only Jews that suffered and were killed. And you talk very specifically about the NKVD massacre that occurred in July of 41 when the Germans turned on the Soviets. And you want to talk a little bit about that? Because you go into detail about that massacre in the book, in gruesome detail. But you said that you wrote a chapter about gruesome detail of the Jewish massacres in Dobromyl, but you deleted it. That you didn't want to put it in the book because you didn't want the book to be about that. So you want to expand on that a little bit?
When I did the research and I encountered some of the descriptions of what went on, there's a part of me that wishes that I never seen it. Because from time to time, at any given moment, I could picture some of the things that they described. And I felt ultimately that in a way to share these details with fellow Jews would be a punishment. That you don't have to walk around for the rest of your life picturing these things. We have enough pictures in our heads about all kinds of tragedies that happened. Actually, ironically, somebody who read the book got in touch with me and said that was a very good literary device that you used. You kept on saying these terrible things happened, but I'm not gonna describe them, which only made people wanted more and wanted the very thing that I was holding back. There are plenty of descriptions about Jews being tortured, non-Jews being tortured. Again, my whole mood in contacting and going back to that town was is as a positive influence and as for a positive experience. So yes, I couldn't betray history. I had to put something in there. But to be honest with you, I don't even remember at this point what it is I wrote.
Well, you did put the detail about the NKVD massacre of the prisoners that they had. And now I want to say that you were at the gala, so you heard that Gesher Galicia was awarded the Stern Grant for NKVD prisoners exactly during this time frame, that we have files that we found in the archives of Lviv. And these folders have pictures and they have personal items. If someone was arrested with a wallet, they'll have items that were in the wallet in it. And we're going to start, it's a 3-year project, and we're going to start to give the first batch of files. It's a lot of work for us to translate and to index these, but many of these people that were, suffered and were murdered in this massacre, there might be files in this project if they were Jewish. We're only working on the Jewish files, and it'll start to be released in December. We'll have an announcement about that. And you say how one of the lessons that Jews always talk about when they come to talk about the Holocaust is never to forget. But then you say, what should we not forget? And I think I never saw it from that point of view. And that's a great question. You want to get into that?
Well, like you say, the saying that's repeated over and over is never forget, never forget. And I'm not exactly sure, like you say, what I'm not supposed to forget. It says that we're about Amalek, that we're supposed to remember to forget Amalek and to remember to forget. So I guess it's the same thing that we have to remember, but why? So that we know that what they did was terrible, that we should prevent. Now, I'm thinking, I'm interrupting myself and thinking that when I spent time with Elie Wiesel, and I spent a good amount of time with him, just the two of us, when I was in my early 20s, I asked him what he learned from the Holocaust. Most of my conversation with him had nothing to do with the Holocaust. I was talking about family history. I was talking about becoming observant and these kinds of things. But one day, when I was with him, I said, "What did you learn?" And he said to me, "I learned that if you see evil, you should fight it immediately. Don't think that it's going to get better. It's not. It's going to get worse." So I suppose that what I'm supposed to remember when it says never forget is I'm supposed to remember that evil, when it appears, it expands and it grows. It doesn't diminish. I I feel brokenhearted when I think of, again, the young Jews who are exposed to this stuff. I've seen too many people with chips on their shoulders who they ultimately become bigots. They ultimately become bigots against non-Jews. I don't want anybody to generalize about the Jews with me, and I don't want to do that with them. It wasn't every Gentile who murdered Jews, far from it. So I try to meet individuals on an individual basis and not generalize about them. Someone's got to do it. Someone has to break the cycle of hatred and break the cycle of bitterness. Somebody said the only thing that you can do to respond to outrageous hate is outrageous love. So I suppose that a lot of what I did in Dobromyl was outrageous. Why did I take this money that I had set aside for tzedakah and give it to causes in this town? It was outrageous. It was outrageous, but it's outrageous love.
Right. Now, it's good that you just mentioned what Elie Wiesel said, because you talk in the book about you have to be on the lookout for approaching signs of when things, might be happening that where evil might be coming about.
Yes.
And the book was written before October 8th. Okay. How has that changed your thinking, or what do you see today that we have to, be on the lookout for?
I don't know how to answer that question. I just don't know how to answer that question. What do we have to look out for? I don't know what to say. It just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart. I don't have any solution or again, I empathize with innocent people who have been killed. But that doesn't mean that they're all innocent by any stretch. And also I understand that they put the military stuff in schools and so forth. So how can you fight a war and avoid those places? It's a tragedy. A tragedy is where there's no solution. Any solution is a bad solution. I don't know what else to say about it.
Right. Okay. So I just want to finish up with this. You're renowned for your genealogy research and your books and in advising people how to do their research of the family history. Did you ever use DNA? Because you didn't mention anything about that in the book. You ever use DNA in your research to try to find the Kurzweils or other family
Yes,
members?
yes, I have. I've done Ancestry. I've done 23andMe. I've discovered lots of relatives who I did not know existed. At this point, I'm not really looking for more relatives. I have so many relatives, I don't know what to do with them all. But I was successful in part because of this DNA research, and some of us have gotten together and meet each other, and there's something very mysterious about it when you meet a fourth cousin and you meet him for the first time, but somehow you feel you've known them before. Somehow there's a bond, there's some kind of a connection that's not tangible, but exists nonetheless. You can't deny it. So I have lots of second cousins, lots of third cousins, lots of fourth cousins, and some of them I've encountered. There was one branch of my family that was a close branch of the family. My grandmother had several siblings, and one of them, a young man, came to America from Hungary and married a non-Jewish woman. And that whole branch of the family was strange to us. We didn't know who they were. We didn't know where they lived. Well, I made it my business to track them down, and I did track them down. And my children and we all went to visit them, and it was a wonderful day. It was people looking at each other in the eyes and saying, we're made from the same stuff,
Right.
and it's heartwarming.
I also had a branch of my family that we connected through. I made a podcast webinar about that for Gesher Galicia. We connected through DNA branch that we thought was lost in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But we found someone living in Israel. But I want to give a shout out to Jennifer Mendelson and Adina Newman with the Holocaust Reunion Project, because the DNA testing for families like us that have been so hit by the Holocaust is not just for us to find other members of the family, of our families that we don't know about, but it's to help the hidden children, where so many Jews were hidden and lost, of people that didn't know they were Jewish and they're looking to trace, or even people who knows they're Jewish and think they have nobody in the world. And this is great work that they're doing. So I urge everyone, they could even get tested without having to buy a kit. If they're a first generation survivor, to get themselves tested. And hopefully we could reconnect more people before the biological factor comes into effect. Well, I want to thank you, Arthur, for taking time out from your busy life and day to talk with us. I think this has been a great conversation for our listeners, and wish you continued good health and L'Shana Tova, and continue your great work that you're doing in Dobromyl and all over. And we want to thank you for that.
So not to about to you and your listeners also. It's been a privilege to have a conversation with you. And it's obvious to me that you read the book.
Oh, I absolutely did. I absolutely did. I absolutely did. And I enjoyed it. And I urge everyone to check out the link on the podcast homepage and give it a read. Thank you.
Thank you.